What's up? We are Why So Sidious. I'm Jeremy. This is Andy. We are here to discuss Daredevil Born Again, Season 2, Episodes 2 through 3. Um, yeah, we've been dropping our Weekend Geeks. We're going to get some reviews out Supergirl, maybe Green Lantern. And yeah, so take a look out for all our stuff. If you want to support the show, go check out Panda Biome Comics. If you do want to buy some comics, this is a place that has really good prices, and you could use code Why So Sidious at checkout, and that'll help support the show. We also have a website in our descriptions for any of our platforms that we're on: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. There's a Why So Sidious website that we built over the last few months, and that's a lot of fun. And you can find our merchandise and stuff there. So give it a look. Today's Daredevil Born Again. Andy, we had episodes 2 and 3. Real quick, how did you feel about episode 1? And then we'll move on to 2 and 3. How do you like those?
Yeah, it seems it was episode one was more of a setup episode. Because I obviously read some of the previews that came out or the reviews before the show came out, where they're obviously not allowed to tell us too much, but give us a bit of a vibe about the show. And a lot of them did say like the first three episodes were all fairly setting the story before everything sort of kicks off. So I wasn't sure what to feel about it. Yeah, episode one felt more like setup going into this week's episodes. But still, we all love Daredevil, don't we? So super excited to see him back. I know that you were super excited about the black suit, and the black suit looked good when we saw it last week as well. Um, the Karen relationship with Matt, I'm like, I don't think we needed that back, to be honest. But is what it is. They've obviously been hiding out, ironically, at Josie's where everything went down. But yeah, a lot of setup, a lot of let's get the ball rolling without it being too much of an explosive start. Because apart from obviously the action scenes at the beginning of last week's episode with the ship going down, apart from that, the only other action scene was at the end when he had the fight when Cherry's having his heart attack and Matt's fighting off the agents before he's sort of saved by Bullseye. So kind of unusual for the first episode of a brand new series or season to not it to be like action packed. So this was kind of like a bit more dialed back in just setting the story up from where we ended in season one. But what did you think about it? Because you didn't get to join us for that episode, did you?
Yeah, I liked episode 1, but I agree. It's very setup oriented. I appreciated a solid action scene right off the bat in the boat, kind of taking Daredevil out of his element. But yeah, it's moving a little slower, but that kind of is more so how the Netflix show ran, right? More character development. So there's hopefully going to be more payoff. I'm okay with them doing this slower storytelling. Season 1 felt like it was like a lot of flashy stuff going on, pretty quick paced. But they're really dialing it back to the characters. And really, there's so many characters they're dealing with, and they all have their own little thread, their own little story. And they're kind of taking the time to let that brew, which I am appreciating because everyone's story
Mm.
is pretty interesting. At least, even Heather, who I didn't like in season 1, I can like see like she wasn't just there for the romance. So she wasn't that traditional kind of cliche character. What happened with Muse actually had a large effect on her in these episodes 2 and 3, which makes sense if you consider how much traumatic things happen to so many characters across these platforms.
Mm.
Oh, I think one of my kids got hurt upstairs. Excuse me. Um, Lexi's up there. He'll be okay, I hope. But it's realistic for her to be traumatized from that and to have these dreams to be really affected by that. So I think that made it kind of realistic. And now it kind of puts her into a place where she is so anti-vigilante that she's willing to join Kingpin and stuff. I'm not saying she's a great part of the show. I'm just saying
Mm.
they're doing good with the characters here. A character I didn't really like in season 1. I see why they did all that with her in season 1 now, and it's actually having an effect, and I like that. But yeah, point being, they're slowing it down, working more on character, which is closer to the Netflix Daredevil as opposed to season 1 of Born Again.
Mm. Fair. I mean, you talked about Heather. I mean, just mention that character now because she spends a lot of time in this episode, obviously focusing a bit on her trauma with Muse, and we find out that she's obviously kept Muse's mask as well. Um, do you think there's any potential that she could have such a breakdown that she sort of becomes a new version of Muse in this series?
That's interesting. I don't think so, but That is an interesting thought, and if that happened, I can kind of buy it. It would be kind of be she would have to have that one really bad day that DC always talks about, like that turns their villains into
Mm,
something pretty crazy would have to happen to flip that switch in her. But it's like, is she not becoming obsessed with the idea in a way? Like in her mind, it's fear and she's scared of it, but like at the same time, is she attaching herself to the idea of these vigilantes in a weird way that could manifest in her going crazy and becoming another muse? That'd be interesting.
mm.
As far as episode 2 and 3, what stood out to you most? And did either episode stand out over the other? I'd say 2 was slower and 3 was a
Mm.
lot better. You know, so
Yeah, two was definitely the slow one. That was like just felt like pure setup. To be fair, just getting more deep into the story and setting the ball rolling on various different parts of the plot for this season. Um, I think if you're talking about what the best bit of both episodes was, it's got to be the finale of episode 3. Obviously, when Matt breaks into Red Hook Port, and he's going to obviously find the weapons, but he finds all the people that are being held captive there. He breaks Jacques Duquesne, swordsman, out of his cell, and they have what has become a patented thing for every Daredevil series, which is the long one shot fight scene. So that whole thing where he goes in, breaks Jack out, who then helps break all the other people out, and then all the anti vigilante task force come in, all done in one beautiful shot, and not just like following him along a corridor for once. Okay, it was a more contained space rather than having to follow along like or up and down a building like they previously done. But the fact that they're sort of going round and round as well, so it's not just focusing on Daredevil. He's got to turn around, and they're focusing on Swordsman doing a few fights whilst the civilians are trying to get out the way, and then the task force are coming in from different angles. So that for me was absolutely the standout point of these episodes, because you're waiting for it, aren't you? Because it's Daredevil, you're waiting to see when's the one shot sequence going to be, and we've had it now, and to me it was just as beautiful as any that they've done.
it was great. I feel like each episode has had one like long shot action scene, not maybe one shot like some of the hallway scenes and stuff, but they it's something the directors talked about before the show started was that they are going to make sure we get a lot of good hallway
Mm.
scenes or something similar, and they have kind of paid up on that, so that's cool. Did you expect any characters to be locked up in there that were familiar to you? Are you surprised all we saw was swordsmen?
Yeah, I did expect there to be,
Same.
because they're talking about the vigilante trials coming up, but all we've seen of that happening is swordsman. Um, which was another interesting point, obviously, for what happened in this, because they basically just stacked that against him like we knew they were going to do, and the judges have probably been bought off and stuff like that. But yeah, I did expect to, they're talking about the vigilante trials, and you expect them to have a few vigilantes locked up. Um, but so to not see anyone else be in there, because we know that's where Punisher was as well before he escaped. So yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I expected to see more. I don't know who I expected to see in there. It
Right.
would have been interesting to just get a few nods here and there, or something like that. Even just seeing like, like in the recent Spider-Man trailer, there was like the hint at Rogue, because when he slams into the side of the bus, there's like a girl that's like dressed in the Vogue colours with the white
Hmm.
streak in her hair. I was expecting maybe even if you just had some people that were like looked similarly dressed to other characters, so
Similar.
you could go, "Oh, was that so and so? Was that just a hint at that?"
Yeah.
That would have been a perfect opportunity to drop some Easter eggs in there. So yeah, a little bit surprised that they didn't. Was there anyone that you wanted to see in there that
No,
could have
not
been?
particularly. Not particularly, but I expected to see someone out. Maybe I like maybe a Luke Cage or maybe even Jessica Jones, and that's how she got mixed up into the show. But in a world where that has apparently New York has so many vigilantes, but you had like dozens of people that we're not familiar with. And I did expect to see someone. Sticking with swordsman though, Jack Duquesne, another good example of a character I didn't care about until this season, and really he was introduced in Hawkeye, so really didn't care for him, and I really like him now. Seeing what he has to go through, um, on the legal side of things, Kirsten got wrecked in the courtroom defending him, and he wasn't surprised. But his character is someone I could follow now. I'm invested. I want to see where he goes. I kind of want to see him, kind of join the resistance as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But did you not like swordsman like me until this, or were you cool with him anyway?
It's a bit of a weird one, because obviously Hawkeye kind of sets him up as the pretend villain, don't they, or a pretend bad guy. and then it turns out that he wasn't a bad guy at all. And I thought he was a fun character in Hawkeye, but not one that maybe you could take seriously because of the way that his like light-hearted demeanor was. And I've seen a lot of people say that Daredevil has accomplished more in 1.5 episodes of using swordsman than Hawkeye did in 6. But at the same point, I think because Daredevil's a more serious maybe show, so therefore they've taken the character more seriously, and therefore he's come across better because they're giving him a chance at almost a like redemption. Because you're looking at a character that's been screwed over. He might be rich and pompous and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, he was someone that helped out Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. He was someone that's obviously been locked up wrongly and has been done over by the Doctor Heather, and then obviously in court. So he's someone that you want to root for because he's getting fucked over and screwed over. So I think he's a likable character. I've enjoyed him, and I actually do want to see a bit more of him. I'm not sure how much more they can really get out of his character. Is more like a light-hearted vigilante rather than a serious one. But you've got to think he obviously joins the Resistance, and he's going to be part of maybe Daredevil's little army that he gets together towards the end of this season to take on, Fisk and the task force and whatever. So I do hope we get to see a bit more of him.
Yeah. And you're not a fan of what they're doing with Karen this season?
I do. That's a tough one. I didn't really care for their romance in the Netflix series. Like I thought it was kind of they have a nice chemistry together working, as you can see on screen. They get on well and they do work and have chemistry together. But I think once they'd split them up in the Netflix series, they should never have put them back together after that. Just leave it split up. And maybe it's like because they've been obviously in close contact and because they've got history. And they've obviously spent these last few months running from the task force and keeping themselves hidden, that they've become close again and ended up in a relationship. So you can say it's a maybe natural course of them. But I'm just unsure on Karen at the moment. She's serving a purpose, but it almost feels like they're giving her too much responsibility in the show and too much to do. And the fact that she constantly gets out of situations where she should get her ass handed to her, I think that's what's annoying me. Is like you come up against any task force member, and she pretty much should probably get done over a little bit. So it's I'm 50-50 on Karen on the way that she goes, because sometimes I think she's really good. The fact that she seems to have built up all these contacts and everyone everywhere, and I know that Daredevil sort of Matt Murdock's teaching her as well with not only fighting, but maybe he's taught her with like stealth and how to avoid certain things. But the fact that she can go out so often just wearing a wig and never get caught, it kind of like when you like considering how grounded Daredevil usually is and its believability and stuff. Sometimes I think with Karen they push it a little bit too far.
Yeah, it's one of my gripes in a lot of movies, like a character that doesn't have the background of, your Frank Castles or your Matt Murdock's. She's just a regular person, lives a normal life, and you show us a few training scenes, and now we're supposed to buy her being this super competent, practically another vigilante on the squad. With that said, though, I do kind of like it more than the Netflix stuff. Anyway, I'm with you. I didn't love their romance in the Netflix. It's hard to like a romance in like the comic book stuff. There's a few good ones: Pepper and Tony, Andrew Garfield, and Gwen Stacy. Amazing Spider-Man. Some of them are good. Didn't love the Karen one. I just like it a little more now because she's less. She's not damsel in distress. I'd rather have this potentially like too competent Karen than kind of have another damsel in distress romance thing going on. So yeah, like I expected her to get captured at the end of the thing when Daredevil's like, Karen, lost Karen for a second. And I was like, now we're going to have a rescue Karen, kind of thing going on. But no, she actually did the capturing to interrogate this task force guy. And so he ends up just wanting to join the team. I didn't expect that to go that way. It's just like, dude, these guys are crazy. I don't like Powell and all these guys. They're psychos. So let me join the team. Do you think he's actually going to join? Because we didn't see any follow-up to that.
No, I mean, yeah, you can probably see a couple of people that might join the task force, and then when they see what they're actually doing, and probably turn around and go, yeah, this actually isn't for me. But maybe like it's once you're part of it, you can't really escape it, because you can't really just turn around and go, "This isn't for me, I quit," because they'll probably lock you up alongside everyone else. So maybe the only way out of it is to contact the Resistance to be like, hey, I can try and help you out, but you still got to help me get out at the end of the day. Um, I'm surprised. I can't remember his name, but when the cop came and joined them halfway through, the one that had the messed up face from season one, like how did
Mhm.
he survive that bombing on Matt's flat? Because he was in there when
That's
they threw
right.
the bombs in, and when obviously Matt and Frank had to jump out the window. So like the fact that this dude's even alive is a mystery. To be fair, that seems like a
D-
bit of a far fetched one.
yeah, I didn't remember that bomb thing. I was just like, wait, why did he leave in the first place? I forgot. Detective Cole.
Mm.
Yeah, I forgot about the bomb. Um, Going back to episode 2, one thing that really stood out to me was Kingpin and Vanessa talking, and he's talking about his motives for a global power,
Mm.
to become a global power. Do you think that's hinting towards something bigger? Is he going to become a freaking worldwide MCU villain? Because it sounds like he was pretty dead set on expanding his reach outside of New York. And Vanessa's, I mean, he's like, but Vanessa's like, how many worlds do you want to conquer or whatever? And
Yeah.
he's like, how
How
many
many
are
are
there?
there? Yeah.
I mean, it's a comic book show. You show the villain saying stuff like that. And like, I feel like that has to be going somewhere, unless it's just kind of building up to a climax for this season. But it'd be cool to see him go worldwide, although that's not very comic-y. He's never really left New York and tried to, I mean, as far as a villain presence, he hasn't really expanded past New York. But it did catch my interest. I'm like, what are they brewing here?
Yeah, it was funny because it was just obviously when he goes, "Oh, how many worlds are there?" I'm like, "You ain't conquering past Earth, to be honest. Because the minute you step out into the universe, you're gonna get your ass handed to you." So it kind of made me chuckle because I'm like, "There's no way you could conquer anything outside of Earth." To be fair, so
Well,
um,
I think it was figurative, for he's conquered the world of New York in its
mm,
own way. It's its own little world, and then conquering
yeah.
other cities would be other worlds
Thing is,
figuratively.
I don't see him doing anything beyond New York. To be fair, I don't think it would be a smart move because he's not. He might have some worldwide influence. Maybe this is where the hand comes in later in this season. That he's sort of with the five fingers of the hand technically been destroyed in the Defenders series, and there's going to be new leaders of the hand, and maybe he has some influence with them. But outside of that, I don't see him doing much beyond that. I can't see it happening outside of New York. Mainly because they've already told us that the sort of Fisk storyline ends at the end of season two.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of Mayor Fisk, not necessarily Fisk is maybe a threat overall, but um, yeah, I just don't see him doing much beyond New York, especially like conquering the or Earth. I think there's too many villains and heroes out there to stop him doing much beyond New York. The fact that obviously the governor shows up as well, and she's obviously got issues with him, and so there are definitely political higher ups above him in the chain of command that would easily be able to stop him. I think his influence and power doesn't stretch out so far that he can't be stopped by other forces. So.
Yeah, he's just a gang, a kingpin, and you don't have like
Mm.
worldwide, everything, all these gangs are very centralized. It just wouldn't make sense. It's just weird that they talked about it, but who knows?
Well, I just want to show his ambition, I guess. He's got to have more
Yeah.
ambition than just conquering New York if he wants to take over things. So, because when we first meet him in the Netflix series, he's got his hand outside of New York. He only sort of like recently came to New York, didn't he? And sort of brought his business there. So, no reason why he can't think outside of that. But at the same point, I don't think he has the ability to strike outside of that and maintain an authority.
Yeah, and you think Kingpin, if he was Daredevil, is such a thorn in his side, why not go take over Jacksonville or something? Just take over a different city that won't have Daredevil.
Yeah, kill
Um,
Chicago.
yeah. It was pretty genius how he used the Matt Murdock thing going on where he's
Mm,
lost and he's asking the public to help find him. Really genius way. 'Cause he knows Matt Murdock is Daredevil, right?
yeah.
He got a couple different. So super genius. I like that. Really cool villain move. He's going to root out Matt Murdock, having the public eye looking for him. A lot like Zemo did for the Winter Soldier. Different methods, but yeah, Kingpin, good villain here. He does that, and then what he does at the end of episode 3, he's he's like kind of elevated as a villain a bit.
Sorry, just remind me at the end of episode three what happened? What he did?
Just bombing that ship and everything.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, he's obviously got his contingencies. Have contingencies for the most part, don't they? He's someone that's obviously, it's not just about his brute force and anger, is it? He's obviously plans well ahead and well in advance, and he's got his team to help him with that. So um, it's going to be interesting to see what sparks it for him. Is it just the continual acts of rebellion that just overwhelm him and in his temperament? Or is it just revealing his plans and getting higher authorities like the governor of New York? I mean, I don't know necessarily how like the system works in America, so obviously I'm thinking that governor is above mayor of New York, or is it governor of the state of New York rather than the city of New York? Is I'm probably one guessing what she is.
Yeah, there
Um,
you go.
and then obviously, so he's obviously starting to step on toes, but it's interesting that obviously in episode one, there was the whole Allegra de Fontaine or whatever her name is, the woman that was like in charge of Thunderbolts, and now the New Avengers. She obviously stopped some of the other federal agencies from stepping in on what he was doing. So she's really giving him some free reign to do what he wants. Be interested to see where they officially fit Thunderbolts into the timeline with what happens with Daredevil in New York, with like everything that Fisk has put in place, the curfew and things like that, and to see then the influence of does it happen before, does it happen after, was it even potentially during? Because Allegra having that sort of influence and telling other agencies to step down and letting Fisk do his thing is kind of an interesting dynamic because she's supposed to be doing things for the better, and she only ever does things for her advantage. So maybe she's thinking if she gives Fisk enough rope, she can maybe get him on board with her plans, and therefore it makes them both a bit more powerful that way.
Yeah, I called that a year ago that Kingpin and
Oh.
Vanessa, or not Vanessa. Uh, De- how the hell do you say her whole last name? Devatante.
Allegra de Fontaine, something or other.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Thunderbolts, Kingpin, Devil's Reign. He had Thunderbolts as his kind of super powered squad because he can't just do these non-powered task force to take out these vigilantes. So yeah, he had a bunch of Thunderbolts. That would be insane to see if our resistance, Daredevil, Punisher, whoever else, actually has to go toe to toe with a couple of the Thunderbolts. That would be wild. But
Yeah.
huge part of the Devil's Reign thing that they're working with.
Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is her full name.
Come on. What else we got? Buck's kind of standing out. I mean, that was a really weird hot dog scene. For some reason, that was just such a weird scene. At the Buck and Daniel's dealing with his friend doing the whole spoof Kingpin show. You think that's going to come back to bite him in the ass?
Absolutely. I think it's going to come back to bite both of them in the ass. Obviously, they've been pushing the fact that BB's kind of playing both sides. So she's looking like she's doing the Fisk administration a favor by promoting, because we see all these videos where like people are talking about how good the task force is and how good it's been for New York and how well New York's doing. Whereas obviously on the other hand, she's using information against them, and information she gets from Karen as well to do these spoof videos and to talk down to them. And at some point, it's going to catch up with her, isn't it? We kind of know it's coming. I think there's no way that she gets out of this scot free. So it's interesting whether she makes it alive through the end of the series or not. But Daniel is an interesting one, an interesting character, isn't he? Because a lot of he is like a naive idiot who's sort of like a bit like sick, lovesick puppy dog with BB. At the same point, that scene with Buck is an interesting one because it shows he's got smarts. Because he even said at the end of it, he's like, I just got you to sit here and take a bite of some street meat that you don't even know what it is when you don't even like hot dogs. So he's got, he's an interesting one to keep his eye on, isn't he, throughout the series, because he can do more than you think.
And Buck recognized he said something along the lines of, this guy might be an idiot, but he might have potential, or he might be underestimated. And that was interesting. Do you think Daniel would give up do you think he will end up giving up his friend? Because I feel like there's no other way unless Kingpin finds out and then Daniel's in big trouble. Maybe Daniel doesn't make it out alive either.
Well, he's another candidate, isn't he, for the for the Fisk taking them out list. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one to see if he makes it through. He's obviously more afraid of Fisk than he is of BB, but does he?
Yeah, I could totally see him turning her in just turning his friend in because just being so loyal to Fisk and
I
saving
think
his
that's it.
ass. That's the
Yeah,
one way he
I think
doesn't
it's a
die.
distinct possibility. Yeah, because he wants to move up. He's obviously talked about the benefits that he gets from it and the like the apartment that he's in and stuff like that. So definitely is one that that could sell out the people around him just to maintain his own standing. Um, but you bring a good point about Buck as well, because obviously we had like in the Netflix series we had Wesley in season one. That this is kind of like a reincarnation of that character, isn't it? And I do like the way that he goes about his business. He's just, I mean, classic British bad guy as well. To be fair, um, just walking around in his beautiful suit all the time and just smooth talking his way through everything, and just that sort of very cool demeanor. So I do like the Buck character simply because he's just a smooth talking bad guy, like the right hand man that does all the proper dirty work.
Yeah. Another thing that stood out, I really liked seeing Karen and Matt talk about Frank. That was a fun little scene.
Mm.
And Karen sounds like she's more on Frank's side. Like we should kill at least a few of these guys, and like maybe the way isn't like to never kill anybody. Like maybe we should put a couple bullets in a couple skulls. So that was interesting, and then just nice to talk about Frank. Remind me, Frank escaped, and we saw that in Born Again season one.
So that was it was like a almost like at the very end or a post credit scene of season one, where it shows him sweet talking a guard to go up like close to the grate, and he basically like snaps the guy's arm and steals the key
That's right.
and gets themselves out. So, and then obviously the Punisher special that we see after the finale of this season is going to be showing what Frank's been doing during the same time as season two and what leads him up to where how he gets into Spider-Man.
Is that for sure?
Um,
Do you don't think it's going to be the Daredevil's going to end and we're going to move forward with Frank's story? You think we're going to go back during the
Oh
Born
yeah,
Again
I mean,
season two?
I'm sure that I'm absolutely sure that they said that this was basically showing what he's been doing since he in between when he escapes at the end of Born Again season one and Spider Man.
Okay,
So
nice.
how
Yeah.
he gets from A to B, and what
Okay,
he's been
yeah.
doing in the in between. So otherwise, it's a bit random that we just see that he escaped and then he just shows up in Spider Man and who he's fighting, which probably actually wouldn't have made that much of a difference because he's escaped and he's like now causing havoc against the task force or the military or whoever it is we see him going up against in Spider Man, or damage control perhaps. So wouldn't be that much of a jump to just assume that that's where he's got to now. But yeah, this is supposed to show what he's up to.
Of course, yeah. It's just, are you retracing steps from Born Again season two? I'm just wondering if whatever ending that season two has, I feel like it'll be a big change in New York, and maybe on this Frank thing, we might get like 10 minutes of what he was doing during Born Again, and then we see whatever happened at the end of season two take place. Then we move on forward from there. So that's the only reason I'm wondering if it would be like
Quite possibly.
before,
Quite
you
possibly,
know.
he might have gone to ground for a while whilst the events of Born Again season two happen, and then he re-emerges sort of around the same time that it ends, and that takes him from there to Spider Man. But either way, we get to see what he's done between Born Again season one and Spider
Yeah,
Man
yeah,
to
yeah,
get
for
into
sure.
that spot. So,
It
but yeah, it was
really seems
cool.
like it just really seems like they're purposefully building a lot of this Daredevil stuff and Punisher stuff for Spider-Man. Like it's like old MCU, like things are going to play into each other, and we're
Mm.
going to know exactly why Frank is in Spider-Man. It's really exciting. I mean, it's just all these characters that like you don't think are going to go on the same screen because Marvel barely owns Spider-Man, barely owns the other characters. But yeah, very exciting. All right, sir. What else do you got before we wrap it up? Any other thing that stood out?
Obviously, I guess they sort of debuted a new White Tiger in these
Yeah.
episodes as well because Angela gets a mum arrest or Angela's mum gets arrested by the task force, and then she obviously goes and sees Kirsten at the lawyer's office, and she gets her dad's stuff and obviously gets the amulet back, and then she helps Matt and Karen get the people out at the end and get her mum out, and she's obviously wearing the amulet. So whether we see her in a full costume or not by the end of the season, I'm not 100% sure. But I think she's obviously it's a weird one because we know that she obviously plays that White Tiger in the comics. She takes over from her dad. At the same point, it's like, are you giving the mantle to like a 16-year-old kid in the MCU? It's like, I know the amulet gives extra powers, but at the same point, the only person we've ever seen that young in the MCU with powers is Spider-Man. So to give someone like Angela those powers in what is becoming very quickly an overpowered MCU. For someone that young is debatable whether it's the right move to make, but it's going to be interesting to see what path they do take with her, because she's obviously going to join the Resistance as well, and whether, because obviously Tony puts a lot of trust in someone like Peter when he's 15, 16 in Civil War and in that situation, but he's obviously got extenuated powers in terms of strength and ability. So, would Matt trust, or not that would he trust Angela in a situation where he's putting a team together, but would he consciously put a 16-year-old in harm's way? I think is a moral dilemma that Matt's going to maybe have to deal with later in this season. Maybe Jessica Jones becomes a bit of a mentor to her at the same point, because she's looking up to an older, strong superhero woman, and so maybe there's a bit of a dynamic there that we're going to see. So it's going to be interesting to see how these characters mix in this team that Matt's supposed to be putting together. And that's another thing I was thinking about as well. Sorry, you can. I'll let you go back to comment on Angela.
Oh, you're good.
It's just the fact that he's obviously the end of season 1 is the fact that, like they said, literally we need to put a team together to tackle the Fisk and the task force. But they seem to have spent the last few months pretty much working by themselves with just Matt and Karen, and that seems to have been the way that this season has started as well. So I don't know whether they put the back burner on put it on the back burner, the idea of putting a team together, but I thought that was something that early on in the season we would see a lot of Matt seeking out people to help him and other superhero powers, or people with superhero powers, sorry, to get on board with him and to help bring the task force and Fist down. So I don't know whether that's something that they will play into more heavily halfway through the season when they feel like it's getting a bit too much, when there's obviously going to be a turnaround in their misfortune. So yeah, I just expected them to focus more on that in these early episodes, and they haven't really touched on it at all.
Me too, because now I don't really see like this great team being put together of all these characters. I wasn't expecting a giant fest of characters. Like I'm not expecting the Defenders to be reassembled. Although, I could buy that too. But it's just at this point, whatever's happening with Fisk seems like it's ending this season. So I mean, I don't know who else you're going to bring onto your team in the next few episodes, but it's going to be like, if anything, a really quick team build up, and then it'll be over. And do you see anyone besides Jessica Jones, obviously White Tiger, but do you see any like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Shang-Chi, anybody at all like joining the team? Or are we going to do like different people are going to get these powers and we're kind of barely going to know them? They might be some character from a comic, and we're going to be full of these kind of semi-known or maybe not known characters. I don't know.
It's an interesting way to go about it, because we know there's a lot more superheroes out there that just aren't ever shown in the films or TV series, simply because, I mean, She-Hulk is the one that we can thank for that, because you had the guy that creates the costumes for Matt that had to go in court, and up against, when Matt was representing him up against She-Hulk, and so it showed that there's a lot more people out there, and even in She-Hulk series itself, there was a lot more smaller superheroes that we might pick out from the comic books and go, okay, they had a small part in the comic book, at random point or whatever. But it shows that there's a lot more superheroes out there now, so there may be a chance that we get a few of them. But I think in the big names, I mean, you mentioned the obvious ones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. Pictures out online today confirmed that they're going to be in season 3 of Born Again. Whether they happen to jump in right at the end of the season, I would like to think yes, but at the same time, probably no. They're saving them for season 3, so at least we know we're getting a Defenders. The Defenders are getting back together for season 3. Will that happen at the end of the season? Probably not. Jessica Jones, we obviously know she's coming in. I'm expecting to see her in the next episode or two. I'll be really pissed if they just leave her for the last episode or two. I think, she doesn't have to play like a massive role in the second half of the season, but she needs to be in it in the next episode or two. Otherwise, it's kind of like that misdirection that you feel like she's been in the trailer, so she's going to be in it a bit more, and then she turns out to only be in it for like one episode or two. So yeah, I expect maybe one or two characters to appear before the end that maybe aren't particularly well known, but want to help out Matt. But in terms of the big names we're expecting, like Luke Cage, Iron Fist, that'll probably be next season. But it does then question, what are they going to be facing next season that causes the Defenders to get back together?
Right.
The Mayor Fisk storyline is ending this season, but does that mean the Fisk threat ends this season? Does it mean that because of the return of the Hand that's coming in Spider-Man, that they play a role in season 3? Because we know the Defenders have faced them all together already. And so does it bring the Defenders back together to go up against the Hand once more? So a lot of questions we're obviously not going to get answered for a while, but it does start the ball rolling on our theories, at least, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Man, I'm really starting to wonder if Kingpin is no longer mayor, but then he goes underground by the end of Daredevil, and in Spider-Man, he actually could possibly be like kind of the big bad behind the scenes. Tombstone working under him, I don't know, Scorpion, Thunderbolts, whoever it is. Because yeah, that's you're right. They're gonna all team up. Maybe we do get a scene where they show up at the end. We might see Iron Fist and Luke Cage last episode.
Mm.
So we know they're going to be in season 3. The team is assembled. Like I could see the season ending that way. The team is fully assembled. And maybe they beat Mayor Fisk, but oops, they didn't really beat him because he just goes underground and now he's just more lawless, but still working with a ton of power that he's already established. I could totally see that.
Yeah, because how many times can they have Matt beat him and put him back in prison? It's happened
Yeah,
twice already,
seriously.
and then he's come out from that and recovered. So you do it a third time, it's become the cliche move that just isn't solving the issue. So like have him obviously be fired or whatever, arrested from say being mayor for his crimes against New York, but he escapes and goes underground and just continues with his business and building things up on that side to still be a big bad for the following season. So if they put him in prison at the end of the season, I'll be pissed off, to be honest. It's become the cliche trope now.
Yeah. And going, you brought up She Hulk. Like Daredevil was in She Hulk, and She Hulk's in New York, and she's a lawyer, and she's a vigilante. So it's like she belongs in this show. I'm not saying I want her. Probably the worst show MCU the Marvel's ever put out was She Hulk. Not gonna lie,
Is she in New
but
York? I thought she was in San Francisco.
oh, she is okay. So I'm just off
Hmm.
on that. She's in San Francisco.
I'm
Then we're
pretty sure
good.
she was. Yeah.
Okay, then we're good to go there. Because otherwise, she would like have to be in this show. She's a freaking lawyer. She's on all sides of the coin. But
Well,
wh-
it just brings out the question every time, though, doesn't it? It's like it becomes unavoidable when you have such a big universe now like this, where everyone's contained in a lot of the same space. Is how do these people not show up for all the different threats that go on? Like, I asked the question, the fact that as you know, I finished just playing Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 recently, and like the Venom threat, where he like venomizes half of New York and it's covered in like symbiote and stuff, and it's just like Avengers Tower is in the game. I've had to climb it as part of a mission. So how are the Avengers not showing up for this threat?
yeah,
And in the same way, like once you have these citywide threats in New York, how do so many of the other heroes now not? It becomes a bit of, I know, like everyone talked about it for years with like the original 6 Avengers. Like, how did they not show up in each other's films when there was like a proper global threat going on? At the same point, so yes, you have to make it so they don't show up. At the same point, it starts to become unavoidable. You've got all these characters in this city. How are they not all showing up at the same point to fight this threat? So
hmm and like, Captain America? He just does he know that Kingpin is shutting down vigilantes and abusing his power? Like, if somebody would show up, I feel like unless they're just so centralized information wise to where like outside of New York, you just like you can't contain that information. People are gonna know what's going on in New York. And what Captain America's just cool with that, I guess.
or
So yeah,
even
it doesn't make
the
sense. It's too big of a universe, too many
like
characters.
the Thunderbolts / New Avengers. That's why we need to. That's why I'm interested to find out where that film fits into the timeline with the situation
Yeah,
in Daredevil. Because like, surely Bucky of all people would want to shut something
right.
like this down. Like so, like it becomes unavoidable. I think after a while, it's like you can just go, yep, okay, this is a self-contained story with any of these characters. At the same point, if you're making it like either a citywide threat, a national threat, or a global threat, how do other characters not show up? That's where you start to like it becomes a problem for me. Like I know, like realistically, other people would show up and then not showing up, and that then it becomes a bit of a like the story's got to be really good to make me forget about this issue. So Daredevil was one of the few shows that can probably just about get away with it because you're so encapsulated by the story and
Yeah.
Daredevil himself that you can kind of let it go a bit.
And it's always kind of been in its own world. It's just
Mm.
now you have like told us all that like the outside world is bleeding into this. Spider-Man, She-Hulk, you've already done all this stuff. So it feels that way still, so we excuse it. But they've already like told us this world is we're in the MCU now. Anyway, but I was thinking Winter Soldier being a part of the opposition would be so sick. He would fit right alongside Daredevil and Jessica Jones. That would just like aesthetically be very pleasing. And then obviously the action that
Oh
would
my
be,
god,
he would
I
fit right
would
in there.
love to see the banter between like Bucky and Matt Murdock or Matt as
Yeah,
Daredevil. Or he'll find out that it's Matt Murdock, and he's just like intrigued by like, you're blind. How the hell does this work? Like, I think
yeah.
there would be some good banter there.
And Punisher and Winter Soldier, that would be
Oh,
golden seeing them together. They would just be all pissy at each other.
I think it would be absolutely amazing to see that interaction, having Bucky in them, because Bucky's been one of my favorite MCU characters. Like, I always said, I was a bit more like, I preferred the Winter Soldier over Bucky,
Me
and like
too.
I think it's always been a bit more that like the character of Bucky's been maybe a bit underutilized,
Yeah,
from like Civil War onwards.
right.
Which I mean, I know I was one of the people that more enjoyed the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV series because it gave Bucky more airtime that he deserved as a character. And obviously he's dealing with stuff, but then since then as well, he's kind of just been cut off. And even in Thunderbolt, I didn't think they did his characters justice. So like, I know he's probably getting towards the end of doing MCU films now. Is his character, maybe Secret Wars? We don't really see him again, post Secret Wars. So it's a shame, but I think there's so much more that they could do if they utilized him in the street level stuff. If he's in New York,
Mhm.
he's like trying to solve issues at a better level, but every now and again he can't just help but slip into Winter Soldier Bucky mode and go on the rampage with some street level heroes. That would be amazing.
That would be sick. Last thing we gotta touch on is Bullseye, though, because I thought it
Mm.
was so weird that the way that episode one ended, we got two little scenes, if I'm correct. Two little tiny scenes. First one, Bullseye is in the church and he's talking to this priest who wants absolution. Second one, we see two dudes. This elevator door opens and he drops down and kills these two guys, and that was it. I was like, where was he? What was that? Those two random scenes. Don't know how they played into the story. I'm sure we'll see later, but that felt weird. You teased Bullseye big time in episode one, and then
Mm.
we get these two tiny, like meaningless scenes. Except him
Yeah,
asking for absolution can tell you where his head's at a little bit, but it felt weird because I don't even think he was in episode three at all. Those were both episode two scenes.
I mean the second one is just where he's killing off these two like task force guys. It's just maybe he's obviously just keeping an eye on what's going on with
Okay,
Matt
that's all that
and
was.
Karen and stuff like that. He's just like for some reason helping him out because he wants to get to Fisk at the end of the day, and he's helping Matt create chaos, and in the more chaos that he can create with the task force and obviously thinning the numbers, the more chance he's got to get at Fisk. The first one was more interesting because he wasn't just asking for absolution; he asked for Sister Maggie, and Sister Maggie is Matt's mum. So
That's
the
right.
fact that he's obviously, I think this shows that he's not just looking to get back at, he's playing games with Matt because he saves him from the task force. Because at the end of the day, he hates the task force. He wants to get back at Fisk, but he's then toying with Matt because he's saving him. But he killed Foggy, and he obviously wants to get back at Matt at the same point. And he's going down a route where he's going after the things that he knows Matt cares about. He won't go after Karen again, because I think he's done with toying with Karen a little bit. He knows he can't really mess with her head as much. But if he goes after Matt's mum, it messes with Matt on a completely different level than we've seen before because no one's really gone after his mum. So
All
yeah,
right, that's better.
it's just kind of setting it up to be yet another face off between obviously Daredevil and Bullseye, but Bullseye's playing both sides right now because he wants to fuck off Fisk, but he wants to toy with Matt a bit, so he's saving him yet setting things up to go at him at the same time.
Just an agent of chaos.
Yeah,
That makes
essentially,
that
yeah.
makes more sense. So if that scene was just him killing two task force guys, just showing us that, like, yeah, he's lurking in the background. He knows what's going on. He's gonna kill a couple of these guys. That makes more sense now. Otherwise, I was just like, what the hell was that? Because we didn't get anything after that.
I did expect to see more of an episode two, given what happened at the end of episode one. So it was a little bit disappointing. But again, they're just playing the slow burner with his story.
Now I wonder if he will remain an agent of chaos the whole time, or if he will join the opposition. And I don't feel like, well, Karen certainly won't let him. She's pissed. She's holding that grudge. He killed Foggy. She wants blood.
Yeah,
But is it
I,
one of those things where all the other team members talk her into it? Like, oh, it's okay. Just let him help us this one time. Daredevil
the
probably
one
wouldn't want to either.
see, it makes me wonder now you said that, as if like they're setting it up so yes, at some point they like have to put the grudge aside because they need him to help with taking down Fisk and the task force. But then it makes me kind of think that maybe Karen's the one that kills him off now at the end of this season.
Mm.
I can't remember if they said he would be confirmed for season three or not, but if he isn't, then you could quite easily see the fact that Matt and Karen had talked into letting him join the forces for like a final battle or something like that, and then Like at the end of the battle, Karen just pops up out of nowhere and shoots him in the head or something. And like Matt's then pissed at her because she's obviously taken a life and he doesn't like that. And it kind of brings them back to round, like you said about the conversation they had about Frank and his methods. Um, and she's like, maybe it's okay to kill sometimes because you've got to get rid of these bad people. We're against Matt's obviously philosophy of never killing anyone. So it could be a really interesting one that if Karen's the one to take him out, and then what that does for the philosophy of their chats about Frank style versus Matt style and how they then deal with it in their actual real lives. Because it was definitely a point of friction in their little conversation, wasn't it? Because obviously Matt can tell whether she's lying or not, whether she's like agrees with him about never killing anyone.
Right.
So that could be a really interesting point if that would happen.
Well, in the comics, Bullseye kills Karen Page.
Mm.
So you got to wonder if they're going to pull that from the comics. That was in Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil comic, and it was in a church, and he freaking killed her. So you got to wonder if they're going to pull that.
Maybe it could go down that route if they if Karen like tries to save Sister Maggie, his mum, ends up
Right.
getting in the crossfire of Bullseye. So that could be an interesting one, and gives. And then Matt has to be the one that puts that aside to team up with him in the final battle, and then they have their own battle at the end of that as well.
Interesting. See, if he killed Karen, I don't think there's any teaming up. I think that's more like him committing to the villain role, and they're all going to want to beat the hell out of him. Daredevil might want to kill him and struggle with not killing him, getting real close after whooping his ass. If he kills Karen, yeah, he ain't going on the team. That's for sure. Because Foggy and Karen, bro, too much. So you got to wonder if they'll do the comics, or Karen could kill him, starting that conversation. And she's clearly gonna. It seems like she's gonna go down a path towards murder. That seems where it's going. And yeah, all the philosophical conversations that come with that, which they're always pretty good, but you can't do it too much. You can't overdo it. Talking, because we're probably going to have that conversation between Spider-Man and Frank too. Why we shouldn't kill, why we should kill.
Yeah, he's probably like, I've been through this already twice with Matt, so I don't need to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, hopefully they do play it like that. Yeah,
I think they should avoid going down that route of doing the philosophy talk with Karen and Matt, though, simply because you've already had two massive scenes where you've had that talk with Frank and Matt, and you can't top those. Like, everyone talks about how now that obviously the Netflix stuff is part of the MCU as a wider thing, it's canon. Those two scenes are counted as two of the best scenes between two individual characters in the whole MCU. So I don't think having Karen take Frank's place in that conversation is not going to stand up to the same level, especially when a lot of people do consider Karen to be an annoying character. So you can't really insert her into that conversation, and then it be if they make it as good or even close to as good as those Matt and Frank conversations, then fair play. They've done an amazing job. But I don't think I could easily see them trying to insert in this season in place of Frank for that conversation, but I don't think it would stand up to the level of the previous ones.
No, I don't think it would either. I don't think they have to, though. I think the only reason they can do the conversations is because Frank is on the opposite side of the spectrum. Daredevil's on the other side. Karen is like floating in the middle. She went through some stuff. Now she's like kind of on the fence, doesn't know what way she's going to lean. So Matt's going to want to pull her over this way. I could just see, it's just part of the medium. They always got to talk about it.
But she's killed before, isn't it? So it's not like she's
True.
unaccustomed to that situation.
Wesley, right?
Well, yeah, she obviously maybe not intentionally, but her brother, in obviously the Netflix flashbacks in season 3, I think it was. I'm sure she's offed a couple of other people throughout the time as well, not just Wesley. So in self-defense, more than just like cold-blooded murder, but still, she's not unfamiliar to pulling the trigger on someone.
True. Well, you got anything else?
I don't think so. I'm just looking forward to a bit more action. It's not been the most action-filled three episodes, like I said, apart from the last bit of this episode 3. And the previews I read before the season started said that basically the end of episode 3 is where the action starts to kick off from for the rest of the season. So definitely hoping for a bit more action next week.
Yeah, because it really seems like they're building up to some pretty cool stuff. Like there's a lot of paths that are about to cross, and I feel like it's going to get pretty freaking crazy. And I'm really looking forward to it. I expect one of the best. I kind of expect the best season finale slash penultimate
Mhm.
out of any Daredevil season. Just the way things are building up, the character arcs that are brewing seems pretty exciting, especially because we got Frank, Punisher after that, and then Spider Man after that. It really
Mm.
feels like I'm just worried that it's just the whole season's like a build up for something. I'm really confused about where this goes and why Frank and Spider Man and who the hell, where'd Kingpin go? So I'm really excited to get some answers.
Well, just quickly, what do you think to obviously the confirmation now that Defenders are going to be back together for season 3? So, in our little group chat, we obviously got Dave's feelings about it because Dave hates the two characters. I love them all. I can't wait to see them all back together. So, how are your feelings on the reemergence and togetherness of this group?
I always like more familiar characters because I really like big personalities intertwining, and um, I really enjoy it. That'll just be more fun, I think, for me if I hear Luke Cage and Iron Fist are in there. I'll be happy, especially because even the Daredevils, I mean the Defenders show, not that bad, pretty cool little show, and I think they would do even better teaming them up. And it's not like they're committing to a Defenders title; they're throwing them in Daredevil, like their most valuable TV series IP, I think.
Yeah.
So that I think it sounds like a lot of fun, and it makes sense because things are getting really crazy, and they're obviously building a team. Feels like they're paving the road for the Defenders by saying stuff like that. So yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. And
I,
we've got a hell of a busy April coming up as well, haven't we? So Um,
yeah,
we've got a lot to cover because we've obviously got continuation of Daredevil. Maul Shadow Lord starts next week. I know we're not going to cover an episode of that as it comes out, but we'll be doing like the beginning and end of it. I'm making some guest appearances on other podcasts to cover that as well, since I'm the Star Wars guy. Obviously, we've got The Boys starting next week as well. That's going to be pretty mental. You mentioned it. I just want to make sure everyone knows we're going to be covering a lot more comic book stuff coming up soon as well. So we've got Supergirl, we've got Lanterns, we've got Punisher that we want to cover. We're continuing the road to Secret Wars as well, and possibly even some what was it? Absolute Batman or Ultimate Batman?
oh
Sorry,
yeah,
my mind's
yeah, pending. Yeah,
that we're hoping to get around to as well. So it's going to be a busy couple of months, and so you better make sure everyone's tuning in because we got a lot to cover, and it's going to be a lot of good shit.
100%. Thank you guys for joining, checking us out.